Now, companies that are still doing the traditional assessment today, which essentially means that you are investing a certain amount of money for doing a static assessment that will give you a view of what issues you have, what vulnerabilities, what weaknesses, and then will give you maybe a plan for doing remediation for the set. That will keep you busy for a certain amount of time while life is still moving on. So things are still evolving and threats are still coming in, and you might need to adjust. Therefore, the traditional way of doing things essentially will allow you to have just a static view of things and then start planning for them, and you will have to take a program and continue it, etc. That will burn money immediately and then will leave you very little time for flexibility. With the CACR methodology, essentially you don't need to go through a full-blown assessment. You will just decide, I want to cover the scope, I have the system, I want to verify. You can jump in right away, start going through your sprint cycles of assessment and remediation.
Mario Procopio, welcome to the Human Zero Day. Really excited to have you here with me talking about AI, cybersecurity, human security, everything related. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, and very happy to join. Yeah, really intrigued by the topic, by the way. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about, I think, probably the most some of the most exciting topics around security. Yourself today, you're the founder of Procopio, and the methodology which you've shared with me, which I'm really excited to dive into today, really talks about how do you continuously assess risk and how do you remediate risk. And part of what is, I think, really exciting in today's world is that the risk of humans and human security is changing constantly. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing your insights as a CISO and as an entrepreneur on addressing those risks, especially as we don't know where they're heading. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Mario, you have quite an extensive background as a CISO and now with Procopio. So tell me a little bit about your journey all the way from when you started, because you've been at this really from the emergence of the internet, even a little bit before that.
Yeah, correct. So I started actually as a developer, so I was really interested in building things, developing applications, and that was really exciting times. And I must say, I still look back at that because it allows me to see the insides of applications, how applications work, and you consider a lot of security issues. Many of security problems come exactly from bad coding, right? Bad development of applications. So it's good to have that kind of insight. Beyond that, it was the times of the internet. So exciting times. People were starting to connect, and there were opportunities, to see this evolution of services which were being available on connectivity, on services, on telcos, and I was supporting the startup. So we started up with Italian Line, the new internet provider in Italy, the first one actually, and there I was mostly on the networking side, and therefore seeing things from that perspective, which is also very interesting and helps also to have an understanding of how certain things work, right? Connectivity. At that time, there were no firewalls, so we had to be creative in trying to protect our services directly on routers. So creating ACLs directly on the routers themselves. Mm-hmm. Then beyond that, of course, going more focused into security. And essentially, building up those capabilities, which then evolved, like intrusion prevention systems, to help to protect better the environment of applications. And eventually, my career was mostly as a CISO. Then that's more or less 20 years that I've been in this role, in this area. I've been a CISO in telcos in Italy, and also global enterprises. And essentially, the experience that I managed to squeeze out of that kind of role, being a CISO in big corporations gives you visibility of technical issues, and very important processes, and then the human element, being able to also integrate that. And the security measures need to encompass a bit of everything. So we always say, process, technology and people. And that is totally true also in cybersecurity, of course.
So Mario, a lot for us to unpack. I want to quickly just grasp that this transition from developer to security. What do you remember? What was it for you that made you make that leap from being a developer to being a security professional? What was it?
Well, security, essentially, there was an opportunity for me to build up a team because there was a necessity. But the progress from application development to networking and to security, I think, gave me, the opportunity of seeing the different dimension, different perspectives, which are not so common or not so obvious if seen, within their individual silo. So essentially, that sort of gives a panoramic 360-degree view of how things operate and integrate with each other and the complexities of each. Yeah.
So you've been at the CISO capacity for the last, I guess, 2 decades. You've and as a young security practitioner myself, more so on the offensive side, I've been fascinated looking at this journey from the firewalls in '95 to up to malware detection with Symantec, and then cloud security and identity security. And it feels like every few years there's this whole new category of security risk management that opens up, and we're adding a few more acronyms, and Gartner adds a new magic quadrant, and I mean, it keeps on growing and growing. Can you share with me a little bit about your own experience? How has it been like for you operating in a landscape where you have certain risks that you're managing, and then every now and then you have to be open to accepting a new modality that you now have to tackle? And it's almost if and how do you also do that in accordance with your organization, because you effectively have to go back to your org and try to get them to understand this risk and why perhaps you need more budget, etc. Walk me through your experience with the evolutions of cybersecurity.
Yeah, indeed. So that's one of the biggest challenges because cybersecurity itself is extremely dynamic, and there are so many variables, which can change. So we mentioned threats. They're new, challenging, sophisticated. They're new, entry points, vectors of access, and there are risks which appear continuously. There are vulnerabilities which are published every month. And then there is the organization itself that is evolving, is changing, it's adapting to new businesses, it's deploying new applications, migrating to the cloud, doing digital transformations, etc. So all of these need to be viewed in their holistic view. So considering all of these aspects and being able to to drive and to prioritize based on the elements that are fundamental for that period of time or that requirement. What I like to highlight all the time is that it's foundational to be able to have visibility of what the organization has. So starting from its assets or its infrastructure, if it's using cloud, if it's using on-prem, and clearly understanding, where the systems are, what they are doing, what data is processed, etc. That's why I say for me it's foundational to have a risk management program, which essentially allows you to identify, and here we can actually connect with the NIST framework, which says it really nicely. The representation of the NIST clearly identifies how cybersecurity needs to be properly integrated with different phases, different capabilities, starting from the identify phase, where you will actually know your assets, understand what they do, classify them, understand what data they're processing, who is allowed to access them, what is their exposure, etc. And then you will be able to protect. Based on the knowledge that you have, you will decide what security measures you would want to implement. And then when those will fail, you have to have capabilities to detect that something had managed to bypass those protective measures. Then you have to respond when an incident happens and then recover. And overlining this or underlining this is the governance phase, which allows you to put everything together and ensure that you are managing the entire ecosystem with harmony and with proper, holistic vision.
So if we look at the evolution of cybersecurity and we connect it to this to the cycle that you just mentioned, I'm really curious about this first pillar, which is the risk assessment, right? And you're trying to evaluate what is the risk that I'm prone to, because the next question is going to be, well, how do I proactively defend and protect against this risk? How what are the tools that that CISOs have today, that you've had and others have, to evaluate and quantify risk based on their own organization? What does that thought process look like?
Yeah, indeed. There are many methodologies for quantifying risk. You can quantify risk in a qualitative way, meaning you will understand more or less the impacts of certain elements, the likelihood, the impact that a threat can damage your company. Or you can even go into figures and have numbers connected to that. That is quite complex to achieve. You can do it based on value of asset, or you can also do that based on value of the outcome of a service. And so what would happen if that service would be disrupted for a certain amount of time? Then what would I, as an enterprise, where would I lose money and how much would I lose? But beyond going into that, I mean, it's really important that an organization has some sort of risk methodology that they can implement, being it quantitative or qualitative. It's really important that there is one. You can also go to the FAIR Institute, and they have a very interesting quantitative methodology. We've built our methodology, which we call CACR, so continuous assessment, continuous remediation. So it's mimicking the CI/CD in DevOps, with the concept of being able to repeat short and frequent cycles. So we call them sprint assessment sprints, which allows any organization of any size to immediately start working in a risk approached way. So you will be able to identify those systems that are more important for your business, those that are important because they are processing personal data, and then you will be able to go through an infinite loop, and that's how we represent it, in which one of the tools that we make use of is threat modeling. And threat modeling, we repeat it twice in the assessment phase and in the remediation phase, where we break down the services that we are analyzing into boundaries and ingress points, egress points, where data can flow in, where users can access, what type of users are we talking about? Are these consumers? Are these administrators? What data do they have access to? And then we try identify threats that could be attacking, could be hurting the service, and we come with remediation ideas. And based on these results, we will evaluate also on the effectiveness of certain actions, and then prioritize based on the effectiveness of these. So we will be able to, and on the impacts on risk reduction of these countermeasures that we would implement.
By the way, Mario, I love the CACR terminology and the analogy to CI/CD, which is a world that I'm very much fond of. But how is this different than what we've had before? So if you were to look at the way that a CISO or an organization would model its assessment, and then threat, and then remediation, how did that look like 5 years ago versus the world that you're envisioning today? What's the difference?
Well, not even going back 5 years ago. Actually, there are many companies that are still doing the traditional assessment today, which essentially means that you are investing a certain amount of money for doing a static assessment that will give you a view of what issues you have, what vulnerabilities, what weaknesses, and then will give you maybe a plan for doing remediation for the set. That will keep you busy for a certain amount of time while life is still moving on. So things are still evolving and threats are still coming in, and you might need to adjust. Therefore, the traditional way of doing things essentially will allow you to have just a static view of things, and then start planning for them. And you will have to take a program and continue it, etc. That will burn money immediately, and then will leave you very little time for flexibility. With the CACR methodology, essentially you don't need to go through a full-blown assessment. You will just decide, I want to cover the scope, I have the system, I want to verify. You can jump in right away, start going through your sprint cycles of assessment and remediation. Assessment or remediation, which can be parallelized, so they can work very quickly and can be very effective and in time, so they're always very current. And then it leaves you the flexibility to either extend the scope, so make it broader and add new systems, or adjust on priority, and or adjust on the framework that you have implemented. For example, you say now we have NIS2, which is we need to, some companies need to adhere to, and you don't need to scramble. You will just verify what additional controls you need to add into your existing framework, harmonize them, and then you just keep going with your cycle. No hassle and no problems. So essentially that becomes very, very flexible, easy to adjust and adapt based on what is going on, if there's new threats that you need to prioritize, or if your business needs more attention elsewhere.
And so it sounds like you're really taking this from a periodic, I don't know whether it's quarterly or biannually, maybe you can share more approach that CISOs would do. And I'm hearing a lot about, the way that CISOs present to the board, here are the top threats, here's what I'm going to do next year. And it sounds like a very static, point in time approach. You're really talking about an agile methodology, bringing it to the risk and remediation context, right? So how big of a shift are you talking about here? Is it instead of once a month, we do it once every 2 weeks, or is it as big as once a quarter, we do it once every 2 weeks?
Yeah, correct. So normally, as you were mentioning, companies would have a campaign which is a yearly campaign, and you would provide results. Then maybe the more mature would say we have quarterly reporting, and so you would report to the board on a quarterly basis. We can easily get to the point in which we can report on a monthly basis, but also with tools, this can be done actually real time. So we can integrate the results that we have based on the status in which we are, where the progress of remediation actions, and we can in any point of time, just at a click of a button, provide a report where we are, where we stand. And that gives a few benefits. One is to the CISO himself. He knows where he stands, what he needs to still do, what he's achieved. And he can demonstrate achievements to the board and say, hey, this is what I had planned to do. I'm covering these risks. This is how I spent my budget. And this is what I still need to do for the next cycle, the next sprint. Therefore, this is what I need for funding, and I will cover these other risks. And that becomes then an easy program to follow up on. And everyone is fully aligned. There's a lot of visibility. You have a good understanding, you have a good plan, and you can adjust flexibly. It doesn't have to be a static 1-year-old plan, and then you can review it at the end of the year.
And are there elements already in cybersecurity that have begun to shift to this, I guess, CACR mindset? Because I would imagine that there's elements in the attack surface where CISOs are understanding that they need more continuous real-time feedback on their posture management versus other areas which are more static. Is there already a shift there, or is this something that's still very much in the static world?
No, indeed. So if we go then into operational elements, then we will, and there's always been this need for visibility of what's going on, and it's an essential capability. And indeed, the NIST framework identifies this in 2 out of 5 phases, right? So you will have detect and respond, which are 2 capabilities which are actually real time. So the more data you're capable, more telemetry you're capable of pulling in from systems, from endpoints, from routers, firewalls, etc., cloud environments, the more the granularity you will have in your dashboards of what actually is going on, and you will be able to capture those weak signals. And of course, it's very important to then create content and use cases which are relevant to your context and are relevant to your business dynamics, right? So if you have people that travel very frequently, you will have conditional access that will take into account that possibility. You don't want to over annoy your end users, your employees, challenging them with 2FA all the time. But the better you have an understanding of your company and how it works, and you're more integrated into the business, the better you will be able to tune your machine that receives this information and will generate the alerting based on that and the logics that you want to give to it. So indeed, SOC capabilities are fundamental, and nowadays we have more and more information which we need to be assisted by AI and being able to correlate very quickly and understand, if there are any weak signals, and be able to jump on them and act upon them.
So you've been now, I know, working with different CISOs on this, and you yourself are, with more than 2 decades of experience. What is the reception that you're getting from the audience on adopting this methodology, adopting this mindset, taking a more iterative, agile approach to risk assessment and remediation? What has been the feedback you're getting?
Indeed, there's a lot of interest, and essentially it's consolidating into a streamlined methodology with very clear steps that need to be followed. The diagram is available. Anybody could actually follow it. It's, I would say, common sense, but the way we implement it and we help companies to execute it, then that becomes a bit of a game changer, because indeed it simplifies the way cycles of risk management are done. And it definitely gets more engagement and involvement. CISOs like it because they are then capable of demonstrating to the board what their security posture is like at that current moment in time with that current maturity level that they have. So it might be that companies already have a lot of visibility and can demonstrate a lot of information. Others are starting new, and they have really nothing to show. So that it's an opportunity with this methodology to start small and show immediately, right? So you can even start with just a couple of systems and go through the process and already have visibility and identify some risks. Threat modeling will illuminate areas of risk immediately that you can show to the board and you can explain in understandable risk terms. And therefore, get into this discussion, which can continue with board members, C-levels, and then integrate also with the rest of the team, the IT team, ensuring that everyone is fully on board and you're sharing, what the objectives are, what your targets are, what are the systems you will be working on. Because security, by the way, is not just an isolated function. It needs to be fully integrated with IT, with HR. We're talking about humans as well, and therefore being properly integrated within the entire organization.
I love it. So let's take a look for a second at this infinite cycle you're talking about, which I think makes sense to me, would be relevant for any attack surface on the organization. And I think we talked about that in one of our other conversations, about this idea of how do you integrate technology to be able to assist and run this process across different integrations, right? And I want to use that as a segue to dive into this context of humans and attacks and the risks associated with the emergence of social engineering and phishing. And for even before that, give me your take on social engineering and phishing in the context of the enterprise, because this has been a growing space since the first days, I think, of the internet, with evolutionary technology, both in detection and response, as well as awareness and training. What is your take on the social engineering and phishing space?
Yeah, indeed. So phishing is being a big threat for many years, and it's still continuing today. It's probably the biggest attack vector that we know of. And there are two lines of thought here. So some say that doing security awareness doesn't really help because the human is weak and he will always fall for that phishing attack, right? And so they say, no, you need to invest in technology. And others instead say, no, but you need to combine because it's not just about technology. There are also some social engineering attacks which happen through other channels. For example, just a phone call where you have a fake IT guy who's calling, an employee saying, hey, I noticed some strange traffic coming out of your laptop. Can you quickly go to this website and click here and there? Yeah, of course, you can block that website, but if the attacker is using a G drive, for example, then you won't be able to block that website. Then no, you can go into levels of sophistication. So I still believe that security awareness is really important. But what's important is how you implement that security awareness. So if you implement it as a boring corporate training session, then you won't get much attention and much traction. But if you implement it, and we've managed to do that actually very successfully in one of the companies I was working for as a CISO, we make it a personal educational opportunity, right, in which we explain to employees how certain threats could impact them personally, right? So you have a Gmail account. Why don't you enable two-factor authentication? Oh, it's your personal email. Okay, nobody cares about your email, but then maybe you have a Bitcoin wallet and you're connecting with that, right, to receive notifications from that wallet, and maybe you didn't activate two-factor authentication to your Bitcoin wallet either. Now then you start getting a bit more attention, people are interested, and if your awareness campaign blends, both the corporate requirements and the personal interest of the people, then it will be extremely successful. You will deploy what we call a culture of security, right, in which people are actually not just interested, they are excited about security. They will attend town halls, October Awareness Month. People will come in saying, hey, what we're going to have this month, we were bringing sessions of hackers doing live demonstrations of attacks via Wi-Fi, etc. And people just get more and more excited and interested, and they will be involved and be able to also to engage with the security team and not just see the security team as a distant team, one that will be checking on them, and then if they click on the link they will be hammered because they did the wrong thing, but actually be able to reach out, report, and ask questions, and look at the security team as a team that can give tips and suggestions.
Absolutely. And so if we're looking now at the idea of a threat modeling and risk assessment for social engineering, we realize it's a big threat, but how are CISOs or organizations today assessing the organization's resilience to this, to even identify where the biggest pain points are and where they should be investing resources to protect their humans?
Well, what CISOs do normally are campaigns. So definitely there are training campaigns, maybe followed by phishing campaigns. So trials, verifying and trying new also threats. So, for example, QR code phishing now is quite new and subtle. And they will try maybe doing also social engineering attacks. We did a few of those as well, in which people would just try and enter the building without a badge, by just talking and reaching out and saying hi to colleagues that they didn't know about, but nobody would say, hey, who are you? I don't know you. And then piggybacking through, into the office, and then walking around, looking at what's on the desk, taking pictures of, open laptops or USB drives, swapping USB drives and whatever. And then doing a nice session after all of that, showing this is what we found. And then documenting everything with a video, and closing out, showing what the actual impacts could be. So giving some results. Okay, this, simulating what could happen if the attacker had actually done a certain action. So these could be effective ways of working, of tackling these kind of risks, and I see CISOs actually implementing some of them. Yeah.
And so do you think, in your assessment today, do you think CISOs have a good understanding today of the human 0 day in their organization. So where the humans are susceptible, how they're susceptible, and where the next attack may come through. Do you feel like they have good tools to be able to make those assessments?
Well, the next 0 day human attack, maybe not. So I think traditional attacks, maybe yes. And again, this really depends on the maturity of the organization and of the CISO, because also already social engineering attacks are not so common, but they happen, and they happen even on a personal level, right? So everyone has probably received a fake SMS from FedEx, saying, "Hey, click here because we're dropping your parcel," or received a phone call, and these are not so new, but not many CISOs are actually doing anything about these, except maybe for training. So yeah, going through videos or short quizzes to try and see if people have an understanding of this kind of attack.
Because it sounds to me like security threats are evolving across the board, and this is exactly why you've founded ProCISO, right? This is why you're saying security is changing so fast. The rate of change of security changes is changing. So the derivative is actually positive, which means that we need to be faster and better at doing these evaluations. With the area that that we're focusing on, especially also here in this show, it's this question of the attacks on humans are probably, I think, changing as at least as fast as any other security attack surface, if not even more, because of AI generated content, deepfakes, the fragmentation of attack vectors on the humans. And so it sounds to me like the way that the model and the methodology that you're bringing to the security world in general is even more dire and critical for human security.
Totally, and I mean that's the reason why we came up with this idea. Now, first of all, because cybersecurity is so complex, we need to find ways of making it easier. And how do you make things easier? Typically, from an engineering perspective, you break down a bigger problem into smaller problems, right? Make them more frequent and easier to handle. And that is the concept of the CACR. So we break down the entire process into smaller ones. We have nice functions which are flexible, which can accommodate new systems, new threats, and have no understanding of the new environment that we need to protect against, and being able to see and shift very quickly as needed to address new threats, and being extremely reactive. Yeah.
Absolutely. Mario, what has been the most fun aspect for you over the last 2 decades as a CISO?
Oh wow! There's so many nice moments we've had. We've had compromises. Those are normally things that a CISO would not be proud of. But I think, and it's important to be able to handle compromises and be able to quickly react to them, understand them, and minimize the impact of that. There's a concept that was highlighted I think a couple of years ago called resilience. And that is extremely important to keep in mind. Resilient means that you can be compromised, and probably every company has or will be compromised, and it becomes really important to be able to understand as quick as possible, possibly with weak signals, and then quickly react and try and block the attack as early as possible on the kill chain, right? The kill chain are multiple steps that need to be followed. The quicker response, and the better, of course. So we've had a couple of really harsh incidents, and in one specific, it was in the times in which, not all traffic was encrypted. So it was enjoyable because we had just deployed a system that would monitor traffic on the network. And thanks to that, we managed to reconstruct every single little piece of what the attacker had done, how he deployed the shell, and then how he activated the backdoor, and then introduced additional code, etc. But also recently in telco, there's a lot of visibility because that's where all the ends meet, right? So the telco provides connectivity. Companies make use of that connectivity. Consumers make use of that connectivity, and attackers as well make use of that. And in the telco environment, there's a lot going on, and we've seen some. I can't tell too much, but I've seen some really crazy stuff. Yes, yes. And when we say ATPs, actually APT, sorry, advanced persistent threats, in telcos, you can really see those. Yeah.
I love it, Mario. I really want to thank you for the time and for being here. This has been a very very informative and eye opening, and I think that bringing the CACR context with the CI/CD analogy to the security world, I think that's such a cool way of thinking in general. But then being able to make it practical and methodologizing it and bringing your expertise sounds like a really big game changer. And thank you also for sharing your insights on the human security element. I appreciate that as well. And thank you very much for being here, and best of luck with all your amazing endeavors.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me. Yeah.
Wonderful.